Okay, hello all you crazy people out there. My name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games, and welcome back to Making Games. This is a tower defense, and in the last video, I worked on laying out a settings menu. Not all of these buttons actually do anything, currently. In this video, I will be doing a little bit of work on the game screen, and having the game window respond correctly when you resize it, send it to full screen mode, that sort of thing. And what else was I gonna add? Let's do that. So right now, in the settings menu, I apparently already have it open. When you click on these plus and minus buttons for the like screen size up, screen size down, it sets a variable, but the variable isn't used for anything, and nothing actually happens after that. And I think this time, in this video, I will go and add some code that runs when you do that. So let me find, okay, this is where the screen stuff is defined. I'm going to add myself a method, and this method is going to be something along the lines of, let's say, or how about instead of set screen size, apply screen size. And that's going to be a function, won't take any arguments. Remember, I did say something about I'm going to have these predefined screen sizes here, so the different resolutions which it is common to see in games. But if the user wants to punch in their own values for their own monitor size or whatever, I do want to have a configuration file which allows for that. So I'm going to add another variable which is going to be current screen size, and this is going to be another one of these little structs by default. And this is going to be a separate struct from the one in this array. X is going to be just 1366 and 768. So this is going to contain the same data as the default, or I should say, as the first element in this array. First, 0th, second, whatever, but it's going to be a separate struct. It's not going to point to the same thing. And I guess I can take this a step further and say x is going to be equal to room width, and y is going to be equal to room height, since that's really the default size of the screen is the room width and height, because 3D. And let's see, in the game's UI over here, I'm going to say game.current screen size dot x is going to equal game dot screen sizes screen size index. I am going to want to keep these as separate structs, so that setting the property in one doesn't also set the property in the other, because that would make things a bit of a mess. So I'm going to save that to a local variable, and game.currentScreenSize.x is going to be size.x, and same thing for the y. And then lastly, game.apply screen size. And we can do this in both the minus button and the plus button. This is going to be a little bit of like duplicated code, but I don't really mind, because this is going to only be in two places and only two places, and that'll be it. I can close out of the room editor for now, and window set size is going to be the first thing we do. Current screen size.x, current screen size.y. And this is not going to work. This is not going to do what we want it to. I believe I illustrated the problem with this in the last video. We haven't solved that problem now. We've just moved it to a different part of the code. And that is, namely, the menu is now sort of in the off center in the middle of the screen, and when I move the mouse cursor, the mouse cursor is not like actually activating the buttons that it's over. I can unpause the game, and you can see now the UI on the left side of the screen, on the right side of the screen rather, is moved over farther than it really should be. UI on the bottom, the FPS meter, is not where it should be. And if I were to try and make the screen even bigger, the problem would only become exaggerated. Like that. And now the problem's even worse. So that's not going to cut it. I will make a commit on Bombardier, And this is going to be some code for tracking the current screen size. And let's see, the first problem, the biggest problem by far, is the fact that the UI is not where it should be. And GameMaker provides a function, display set GUI size and display set GUI maximize, and these should be able to mitigate the problems. You can set the magic thing about the GUI layer in GameMaker is that you can have it basically running at a different resolution from the rest of the game, which allows you to scale it up and down in different ways. And I believe if I were to set this to -1, it would scale to the screen size. So if I were to make the game window bigger, then at least now it's the things on the screen are the UI elements are where they should be, and when I move the mouse over things, the buttons respond correctly to mouse over. But I don't like this. You can see that even here, things are just getting blown up. Phrasing. Things are just getting scaled up, and you can see that the aliasing on things like the text leaves a little bit to be desired. If I were to make it even bigger, the problem would just get worse. If I were to make it smaller, let's go 1280, 720, then the problem would just be even worse. For some reason, it did not allow me to size the window below 1280, 720. Anyway, the scaling leaves a lot to be desired. And I don't want, in any case, when you if you were to play the game in on a bigger screen, I don't want the UI to just get bigger. I do want it to actually stay the same number of pixels, so it's 1-to-1 with the size that I intended it to be. But I do want the elements to, for example, move over to the side and stay anchored to the left side of the screen, to the right side of the screen, whatever. And to do that, I didn't change anything, right? I did. Okay. Well, I can deal with that later. To anchor things to different points in the screen, I am going to go into graphical stuff, user interface stuff, and I'm going to give the parent UI object. Where are we? Actually, maybe not the create event, but maybe in a variable definition, I will give the parent UI object a property, and this is going to be. Am I allowed to? Okay, I can set an expression as a variable definition. This is going to be, I'll call it anchor horizontal, and I'll make another one anchor vertical, and I could define some constants or an enumerated constant or something like that. That's enum anchors. We could have left, top, right, bottom, center, or something like that. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to use the built-in constants fa_center, fa_right, fa_bottom. I'm just going to use these. GameMaker provides you some alignment constants. They don't do anything special. These are just numerical constants. I think center is 1, right is 2, and left is 0 or something like that. I don't really care what they are. But the point is that they're constant, and we can use them. GameMaker ordinarily uses them to set font alignment, but you can just use them as any old constant value that you want. And I think I can actually get rid of the create event here because I'm just going to be dealing with variable definitions. Anchor horizontal is going to start out as fa left. Anchor vertical is going to be fa top. Okay, so by default, UI elements are going to be anchored in the upper left of the screen, or in other words, if I were to open the room, like these over here, this is just the main game overlay, showing the current wave number and the player money and the time remaining and all that. And I could put this in a method, but honestly, I am less interested now in going all in with structy object-oriented programming than I was when I started the series about a year ago. So I think I'm just going to use the regular step event, specifically the end step event, since this is the final step event to run. right before everything is drawn and all that. And I believe that this runs after like window resizing is executed every frame of the game. And first I'm going to need, okay, I will add a create event. All right, this slipped my mind. First I'm going to calculate my my offset from the sides of the screen or the center of the screen or anything like that. I will switch alignment. What did I call it? Anchor horizontal. Did I spell that right? It's not getting syntax highlighted. There we go. Switch anchor horizontal, case FA left, case FA right, case FA middle. If we are anchored to the left, if we are anchored to the left, I will save a variable that is, let's call it offset. X is going to be just my X position in the room. And then we can break. If we are anchored to the right, my offset X is going to be... and since this is going to run when the game starts, room width minus X. And if we are anchored to... I need to break after that. If we are anchored to the middle, this really should be center. I am 90% sure FA center and FA middle are the same numerical constant, but I am not 100% sure on that. And in any case, it's convention for center to be used for horizontal alignment and middle to be used for vertical alignment. A lot of people think it's a waste of time to differentiate between the two, and just so that it's consistent with like my own code and with GameMaker's code, I will be differentiating. Offset X is going to be what do I want it to be? X minus room width divided by 2. Room width divided by 2 being, of course, the center of the room. Follow that up with a break statement. And then we can do something similar for anchor vertical. Just in case anything goes wrong. Which it shouldn't, because I will just be setting these in variable definitions throughout the... But just in case anchor horizontal and vertical are not set to one of these constants, I will predefine offset X and offset Y to 0. You could also just use like a default statement here if you want, but 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Now that we've got that, in the end step event, we will be positioning ourselves. We will be positioning our UI elements. And just, I don't think I am, but I'm not... Okay, I'm not deactivating these, UI elements or anything weird like that, so I don't have to worry about the step event not running for any reason. Anyway, in the step event, switch anchor horizontal. We know the drill. I can just copy paste this and sort of do it in reverse, honestly. If we are aligned to the left, X is going to equal offset X. If we are aligned to the right, X is going to equal room width minus offset X. And if we are aligned to the center, X is going to equal offset X minus room width over 2. And that should be fine. Let me just do this for vertical. And this should set our position automatically in the room when we resize. Now, this isn't everything yet. First, I need to go through the somewhat long and somewhat tedious task of actually setting all of these values. And if you give me a moment, let me... First, let's look at the FPS meter, and I can go into variable definitions. Anchor vertical needs to be FA underscore bottom here, because I would like the FPS meter anchored to the bottom left of the screen. And if you'll give me a moment, I will go through all of the other screens in here and do the same thing. I don't think anybody wants to see me do that, because that's going to take a while, and it's going to be way more tedious than I'd really like. So let me just... UI block raycast apparently does not inherit from, like, parent UI. Okay. I'll just implement that code in a minute. Anyway, let me go through and set these values. Okay, I don't think this is a huge problem, but it's worth drawing attention to. I did not set the type for anchor vertical to an expression as well. That was still stuck on a real number. I think GameMaker would have let me get away with doing that, but in any case, I am setting this to an expression now. Okay, I have set the horizontal and vertical alignment for every UI element in the room editor that's defined in the room editor. I've also defined a horizontal and vertical alignment for what are these? The block raycast objects. Looking through the code, these could probably inherit from parent UI without causing any issues, but I don't want to touch that and potentially cause breakage later on in the project, which would be embarrassing. So I just defined their own offset X, offset Y, and set them up in the end step event. Now, this should cause some interesting behavior. I will once again close the room editor. This will not, I don't think, actually be the end of the story, and indeed, UI button.offsetX not set before reading it. Am I not? Okay, I need to call the inherited event inherited in the top of UI buttons create event. I'm guessing I also need to do the same thing in UI text create event. Previously, parent UI did not have anything running in its creation code, so we didn't really have to call the inherited event. But now that's a different story, and I see I will need to. We will still have UI scaling, but it will not still be correct because I'm pretty sure that's interesting. One that tells me that I did not set the I am not implementing the offsets correctly for the middle of the screen in some way, shape, or form. And also, I forgot to set the alignment on pause game because that's the only one that's still there, which makes it sound like if I were to go into the pause menu, which makes it sound like yeah I forgot to set these FA center and FA middle. Can I realign these? There we go. The left and the right look fine. The FPS meter at the bottom looks fine. So I'm guessing that the left and the right sides of alignment are fine. But maybe did I just miss a number somewhere in offset Y, in FA center alignment and FA middle? Let's see. So say the room size is 1280 because that's an easier number to do math on. 1280 divided by 2 is 640. Let's say that my position of my object in the room is like 600 or so. That would mean that I'm located 40 pixels to the left of the center. 600 minus 640 is going to be negative 40. Offset X will store the value of negative 40. Then in the step event, when this is positioned, offset X is going to equal negative 40 minus 640 as established, half the room, and X is suddenly going to be like negative 680 or something like that. So this needs to be a plus instead of a minus is what that means. Okay. Stepping through your code, one statement at a time. Let's do this again. This should look right. Okay, so all these UI are correct. I can click on a fire shooter, I can build that tower, I can click on it and interact with the buttons correctly. If I pause the game, everything is where it should be. If I were to go into settings, which is the interesting part, settings, resolution, increase that. I am going to... We're still going to be scaling. Okay, so this isn't working, but it's not working in a different way than I expected. First, I will make this a commit. Let me uncheck this because that was just messing around with the GUI scale. I will commit all these. UI elements have anchor points. And that is indeed working correctly. First thing, though, is that instead of room width and room height, because that is going to never change no matter what your screen size is, window get width is what X and Y should be responding to in the end step event here. And this will, let me just also apply this to parent UI. This will cause elements to position themselves based on the actual window size rather than the room size. The room size never changing. The window size can change, and That right now that happens to be the same as the room size, but if I were to increase the screen size, then that would no longer be the case. And this is the way I was expecting things to not work initially. And I see that there is also a text label over here, the actual screen resolution text label, which is not responding to screen scaling, which tells me that I also forgot to set the alignment of that. It's growing with the UI, which is not what I want. And to start with, I will play with this. I may be able to just get away with not setting the GUI scale at all, because it'll automatically adjust. Anyway, I increased the screen size, and we can see that the size of the settings menu is still 100%. We are not being scaled up or down, which is a good step in the right direction. But I have the issue where the mouse is misaligned again. Okay, I can resume the game, and the UI on the sides is again where it's supposed to be. So the FPS meter, the tower UI. We've got a little bit of an issue where, again, the mouse is not lining up correctly with these UI elements. I can fix that, I think. One, because it's annoying me. Let me go into pause menu settings. Let me go and set the alignment of this. This is going to be FA center. I've typed this out a lot today, FA middle. I've been copying and pasting FA center, but I have to type out FA middle every time because I can only have one thing copied and pasted at the same time. Display set GUI size. Can I simply get away with setting the size exactly instead of going -1, -1? Will that do what I think it does? I did this once a long time ago. Nope, same problem as before. Okay, hold the phone. So, the issue, and I'm just gonna edit all that out because it took a while and didn't really go anywhere. The issue is less to do with the GUI scaling and the fact that I am detecting collision with the mouse with the UI buttons in a slightly wrong way. So I'm going to when I just click the buttons, the UI elements end up in the correct place, which is what I want. You can see now that we are anchored to the center of the screen. When I pause the game, we are anchored to the left, the right, whatever, top, bottom. If I were able to move this window up a couple more pixels, you'd be able to see the FPS meter. But I am detecting the mouse overlapping UI buttons in the slightly wrong way. So apply screen size is just going to be this, at least for now, because I do want to save these settings to a JSON file, a configuration file somewhere, so that the user can mess with it. I will probably just autosave that every time you call this function, and I'll add code to that later. But in UI button, I am using the mouse X and mouse Y variables for getting the mouse's position. That is slightly incorrect. What I really should be doing is window mouse get X and window mouse get Y. And that's going to solve our problem. Mouse X and mouse Y are a bit of a minefield if you don't know what they're doing. Mouse X and mouse Y are the mouse's position relative to the room, which works in some situations. That's fine in some situations if you want to click on something in the game world in a regular 2D orthographic projection game. Less fine now, because what I'm really looking for is the mouse's position relative to the game window, which is what the window mouse get X, window mouse get Y functions are for. And I'm not looking for anything like in a 2D game world in an ortho camera, which is not very applicable to me right now. So you can see if I make the game bigger, if I make the window bigger, I can now click on the buttons, they respond correctly. I can make it smaller too. Did that actually make the game window smaller? I think it actually did. Okay. I thought there was like some sort of weird buggy effect before where it wasn't doing that, but I may just be that may have been something else caused by me messing with the GUI scale or something. Anyway, if I were to, let's say, bump this up to 1600 by 900, go back to the game, I could play the game perfectly fine. If I were to mouse over a tower, I can click on it because we are just raycasting directly into the world. That it doesn't really have anything to do with GUI size. And the screen to world script that I'm running to figure out when something is in a location where it can be. Boy, fire plus poison really makes these things HP drain quickly. The screen to world functions just handle everything automatically as they should be. And you can see the health bars the other way around, world to screen. That is also working the same way as it should be. Okay, I can get out of here now. This is worthy of a commit. I can do this. Elements are correctly positioned when you resize the game window. Fantastic. I am pretty happy with the system, I would say. There's a little bit more. One is that if you look closely, actually I'll deal with full screen first because it may be easier to actually see what I'm referring to when I deal with full screen. Where is... That's gonna be one of the UI elements in the room, isn't it? Which I need over here. Settings, full screen. If I were to now, not variable definitions, but if I were to uncomment Windows set full screen, is this gonna work correctly as well? I believe it will, regardless of the actual game's resolution. With regards to the mouse being in the correct place. So if I were to click the full screen button. OBS is going to take a moment to catch up with the recording, but all right, the game is set to 1920 by 1080 because I see that when GameMaker goes into full screen, I see that the game's resolution is forced to the size of your window. That answers my question. My second question, based on exactly what happens when you do go into full screen mode. My second question was going to be whether it would be a prudent course of action to automatically force the game's resolution to the resolution of your primary monitor. But I see GameMaker does that for me, so I don't really have to. Anyway, everything else is fine. I can resume the game. I can play the game. I can dispense flypaper. I can roast things with a magnifying glass, except I can't because I don't have enough money. Let's see, what am I going to do next? I guess I could always play the game. Alright, so what I was going to do before I decided to do the full screen thing is you see that when the game is at a bit of a bigger resolution and or in full screen where the pixels are easier to see, you can see that the resolution that the game is rendering at is actually still a little bit on the small side. Should I upgrade you? Can I upgrade you? I can't upgrade you because I don't have enough money. So all these things are going to get through and I'm going to die. But if you look at the edges of especially the trees and the rocks and stuff, you can see there it's a little bit pixelated, and that is because the game is still rendering to a resolution of 1366 by 768. And when the operating system puts that on the screen in full screen mode, we are simply scaling that up. Or even if we're in a window and we are playing the game at a different resolution, the game is still going to be rendering to 1366 by 768 because that is the size of the application surface, and it's just going to be scaling it to the size of the window. And that's not really ideal. I'm thinking about putting in like a separate resolution scaler option just in case, for example, you're playing this on a Raspberry Pi and you would like to... in fact, a couple of videos ago when I did stuff with the Raspberry Pi, I sort of forced that so that the game wouldn't have to render at full resolution and you could get away with rendering fewer fragments and you could give the Raspberry Pi's GPU a bit of an easier time. Anyway, the point of that is that what you probably want to do when you go into full screen or when you want to otherwise quit to desktop, when you want to otherwise change the game's resolution is also to resize the application surface. And you can do that with surface resize application surface. Remember, the application surface is the basically the buffer of pixels internally that the game is going to be rendering to if you do not have another surface target set. The width is going to be, and I'm just going to copy and paste this because it's going to be the same width as the size of the screen. The width and height are just going to be the size of the screen. Now when I run the game and I go into full screen mode, we should be seeing things look a little bit smoother, or when I otherwise make the game bigger. You can see when I did that, no more blocky pixels around the edges of the rocks and the trees and stuff when I go into full screen mode. Okay, thank you OBS for taking a minute to catch up there. We can see that our aliasing is normal. It's a little bit like sub-pixely in places. actually a little bit more than I would have expected. But otherwise, the edges are fine, and we don't look like we're a blocky mess. All right, that's cool. What do I want to do next? This recording has been going on for a little while, and I kind of expected it to. Let's see, I'll just say enabled full screen, and I will make a separate one for application surface resize, because those are really two separate tasks. GitHub Desktop wants me to update it. Should I do that now? All right, fine. We can restart GitHub Desktop. Anyway, I sort of expected this video to be going on for a little while because there are a number of small tasks that I want to get done here, and I don't really want to split it up into multiples. So I'm kind of expecting this video is going to be going on for a little while. To alleviate confusion, I may do let's see, do UI buttons have an enabled property? It looks like they do. Okay, so I can just enable and disable the resolution buttons when we're in full screen, and that will prevent like the user from clicking on those buttons and expecting something to happen, which is sort of something that I want. Before, when I had the game open in full screen mode and I was clicking on the buttons, you probably would have expected something to happen, but nothing was happening because GameMaker isn't allowing me to set the resolution of the game to, when I'm in full screen mode to something other than the resolution of my primary monitor. So I am going to go into the stop opening the variables definition window, into the it's update, right? It's update. I'm not going crazy. Into the update method of these buttons, and say self.enabled is going to equal window get full screen, and it's going to be the opposite of this. So if window get full screen is true, self.enabled is going to be false. If window get full screen is false, then self.enabled is going to be true. And that is simply going to cause these buttons to be grayed out and not respond when the game is in full screen mode. Let's see, I can do that in the plus and the minus button. And that is that should clear up a little bit of potential confusion when it comes to full screenness. All right, I can see that it's working. OBS, there we go. The buttons are grayed out, and they will not be responding to my clicking on them when I'm in full screen mode. Okay, that is great. When I go back to windowed mode, the resolution is back to what it was. That's cool. Okay, I also would like to, now every time when I close the game, regardless of whether or not I'm in full screen mode, the screen just goes black in OBS, and I don't know why for like 3 seconds. Resolution buttons can be disabled when you are in full screen mode. There's a new feature apparently in GitHub Desktop in the history tab. Drag and drop to squash. So you can squash commits by dragging and dropping them onto each other, onto another commit, or by right-clicking multiples. That's cool. I may look into that later. Drag and drop to reorder. You're allowed to do that? Is that something that makes sense to do? I guess it is. Alright. Squashing is something I have never done in source control, but I have heard of the term. I assume it's to do with like merging two similar commits into one, in case you I don't know, maybe you're working on a feature and you're committing it in pieces just in case something breaks, and once it's complete you want to squash them together in a single commit. I assume that's what it is. Like I said, I know of the command, but I've never had to use it for anything. Where were we? Saving this to a settings file. Okay. I will game.apply screen size. I will say game.apply screen size, and actually no, I won't. I will make myself a method later, and this is going to be a similar task, but it is instead going to be save settings. And this is just going to be a general function which saves all the settings in the game, all the user settings in the game, and it will contain the resolution, the screen size, all audio settings, all the audio volume and that sort of thing. And I will call this both when you click the full screen button and also... Ooh, that's the wrong place. All right. I will call this in the onClick method for both of these buttons. And I will call it in the onClick method for the full screen button. Like so. I will call this when you click on the volume up and down buttons. And that's the last of the settings. Since I have sort of conceded that this video is going to be long, I may do a resolution scaler option, just in case. I don't know if anyone's playing this game on a weaker computer with a weaker graphics card or something, and maybe you in fact don't want to render the game at full resolution, matching whatever your window size is or your monitor size. A resolution scaler option is probably never a bad idea. I've watched enough of the Low Spec Gamers channel to know that some people really, really like the ability to do that. So I guess at the end I'll throw it on. Anyway, when I call the save settings function, that is going to be defined as a method in the game object. And let's see, I have to choose what to save. I'm gonna say JSON is going to equal a struct, and it's going to contain a few things. One is going to be volume master. That's easy. That's just the master volume. If I end up implementing other volume settings for other types of sound, I will save those as well. Screen size index, and I can just copy and paste the variable name. Can be set to my own screen size index variable. The current screen size, yeah, can be set to the current screen size index. And the full screen state is not in fact a variable. That is just a window get full screen. The full screen state is just basically handled by GameMaker. I don't have to keep track of it. I can just use window get full screen. And is there anything else that's relevant? Not right now. I don't really think there's anything else that's relevant. Okay, so once we have constructed our JSON, I will let's just say file text. All right, you know what? I have friends who would get very on my case about using the file text functions. We can do this the long way. Var save buffer. It's going to be buffer create. I'll just give it an initial size of like 100 or so. Buffer type can be buffer grow, just in case it needs to get bigger. The alignment can be 1. We're dealing with strings. Alignment of 1 is fine. When we're done with this, buffer destroy, buffer delete, buffer delete. No memory leaks here, good sir. Buffer write, we will insert the JSON string into save buffer. The type is buffer string. The value is going to be JSON stringify, and we will buffer save. The buffer can be the save buffer, and the file name can just be settings.json. Okay, so this is going to, when we, assuming there's no other errors preventing this from running, when we do anything that would change a setting in the game, let me make the game window bigger. Automatically, we are going to be firing off a little save file somewhere. And right off the bat, I'm realizing that there's something that is slightly wrong about this, but I'll get to that in a minute. If you don't know where this is going to be located, you might expect this file to be generated in the same folder that the game's executable. That is not where GameMaker saves files by default. Instead, you would... Where's a folder that I'm done with? This is going to be saved by default to the one of the local storage folders on your computer. By default, GameMaker will put it in app data in your user folder, and the application data folder is a hidden folder, so if you want to see this on your computer, you will have to enable hidden files and folders, because if hidden files and folders in your Windows settings are turned off, then that folder will not be visible to you. Anyway, go in here, go to local, and it should be under Bombardier. And if you go into this folder, this is where GameMaker is going to save your files by default on JSON. By default on JSON. By default on Windows, you can open this JSON file, and you can see that we have something that resembles the settings that we saved. So we have a JSON object containing volume master, which is at 100.0, current screen size x, y, with the values that we gave it. Screen size index, which we're saving. Full screen, which is false. There's also a null byte at the end, and this is more or less what I was referring to when I said something was slightly wrong. For the most part, that'll work, but a buffer string, when you write a string to a buffer, it ends the string with a terminating null. But if we're going to write a text string to a file, we don't really need that. So if we don't want the terminating null, buffer text is fine. Buffer text is the same thing as buffer string, just without the null byte at the end. And buffer save extended is another function which we have. This will allow us to, if there's anything trailing off the end of the buffer, it will allow us to ignore that by letting us tell us where to start saving from, which is going to be 0 at the beginning of the buffer, and how many bytes in the buffer we will actually want to save to the file, which is just going to be buffer get buffer tell. Buffer tell being the current position in the buffer that we're reading to or writing from. That needs a value like that, and this should cause, if we do that again, the file to be written without the terminating null. All right, once I see that this is working, I will get around to basically loading that settings data when you start the game, which I guess can be like the inaugural save file of this Let's Make a Game series. Anyway, 1600 by 900, that is a pretty nice screen size. If I were to go back to Bombardier and open this up, we can see that we have no terminating null at the end. That's good. That's what we want, because that's a little bit annoying when that's there. And everything else is the same as it was before. Let's see. As you can see, when GameMaker writes a JSON file, it will not make it look nice or anything like that. GameMaker will not insert new lines after every item in the JSON file that it generates. That doesn't bother me. I'm not super concerned about making this file look like pretty or anything like that. It's possible that in the future GameMaker might add an option to the JSON stringify function that will allow you to nicely format the outputted string of JSON, but it's not enough for me to get worked up over. Early on in the project, before JSON parse and JSON stringify were added to GameMaker, I was using a couple scripts written by Juju Adams for loading structs and arrays to JSON, to and from JSON, and his version actually did format the strings nicely, at least if you wanted them to. If you're interested in that, look up the struct and array parser, also known as Snap. But I will not be worrying about that. So we can commit a change, save settings to JSON, and when we load the game, we can attempt to load our settings back out. And this is more or less going to be the opposite. I am going to, instead of, like, it might make sense to define a function called loaded settings or something, but since this is only going to run when the game starts anyway, we can just do it here, and I'm just going to make myself a little region. And I'm going to specifically say if you can, because if for example, the user opens the file and messes with it, but improperly formats it in such a way that GameMaker can't read it, you really don't want GameMaker to crash if that happens, which can and maybe sometimes will happen if the user doesn't know what they're doing. So we can use our old friend try and catch to do this. And this is just going to attempt to do something, and if an error happens, we will be handling that error. We will be assigning some default values to whatever it is that we're looking for, that we're trying to do. So we can try, let's see, buffer load settings.json, buffer delete I'm gonna call it load buffer, like that. And we can read some JSON out of this by saying, again, we're going in reverse of what we were doing when we were saving it. Our JSON is going to be equal to JSON parse buffer read. The buffer is going to be the load buffer. The type is going to be buffer text. Everything in reverse. And this is where the fun begins. We will be setting the state of everything based on what we find in that JSON. So volume self.volume master is going to equal JSON.volume master. Self.screen size index is going to equal JSON.screen size index. Let's say current screen size .x is going to equal self.json .current screen size. Go away. .x. The same for the y. My god. I do not know what that keyboard shortcut is that I keep hitting that keeps jumping me to the bottom of the file. I do it all the time. I don't know what it is and it annoys me. Y? It's something with the down arrow. I'm like 90% sure of that, but I don't know exactly what. You can directly set self.current screen size equal to json.current screen size, but I am slightly worried that if the user like deletes one of the x or y properties from the JSON by accident, then that will suddenly cause things to break when you try to access those members. So I want to set them specifically. So if that happens, if those variables don't exist, it'll get caught in the try catch. Window set full screen JSON full screen. There's also the matter of if these values don't contain a number. So if the user tries to put a string in one of these values that expects a number, that would cause bad things to happen. And I guess as a precaution, if not is numeric, if these values aren't of a numeric type, we can like this. And the default values were, what were the default values? Screen size index, the default value is 1. Screen size is going to be room width. And height is going to be room height. And I guess you can also go a step further to check to see if the user entered like nonsense values for any of these. Like if they tried to set the volume underscore master to like -50 or something like that, you can go a step further. Validating data really can be a bit of an endless rabbit hole sometimes. Since the master volume only makes sense to be between like 0 and 100 in our case, we can use the clamp function to constrain it that way. And the screen size index, since that only really makes sense to be between 0 and the length of the screen sizes array, we can again constrain it to that. Screen size x, screen size y, let's see, screen size index firstly, clamp that between 0 and array length of screen sizes. And x and y, I don't really care what the user enters for this as long as it's greater than 0. So for this I could just use the max function. Just like, alright, maybe I'll make it between like 10 and 0. The max of 10. Make those values bottom out at 10, rather. Just in case. Prevent anything weird from happening. And over here in the catch block, you can print out an error message or something that says like, show debug message. Settings could not be loaded or something. I will just throw this out there that this will always cause an error the first time you run a game, because the settings file will not yet exist, and you will try to load a file that doesn't exist, and GameMaker will not really be happy with you doing that. So the first time you run the game, we will always have a settings could not be loaded error message showing up, but it's not a big deal. If that happens, if any setting could not be loaded, then the game will just go with the defaults, which is what you want on the first try anyway. Again, because like I said, validating data can be a bit of an endless rabbit hole. This will cause a slight issue in that if like any one property here isn't set, that will cause an error in the try catch, and everything after that will be ignored. So if the rest of your file is fine, but volume_master is not fine, then the game will get to looking to load volume master, and it'll fail, and nothing after that will be loaded. To that I say, you can account for that if you want. You can put each of these in a separate try catch if you want. I really am not interested. If you want to, go to town, but I will not be. Okay, so let me run the game, and we should be loading in the game with a window, and we should be having 1600 by 900 as the screen size. It appears that we do not. Was there any error that popped up? I do not see a message that says, oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't actually apply the screen size. And I want to do that. I want to call the apply screen size function after this. I better do that. So, self dot apply screen size. Okay, so that will actually cause the game window to be set properly. So the values may be loaded, but nothing actually interesting happened. All right, so we did indeed load the game to 1600 by 900 as specified in the settings file. Yeah, here, the settings file, I still have it open. If I were to close the game, and if I were to set the master volume to like 50, and the current screen size is something ridiculous like 1000 by like 250, that's pretty ridiculous. That's sufficiently ridiculous. Then the game will be perfectly happy to do that. It'll just look a little bit weird. Okay, yeah, I don't even know how this is gonna work. I should probably make the minimum size a little bit bigger than that. But it's Game Maker did it. Game Maker did it without complaining. We can see that the application surfaces, as expected, the game is actually playable. The UI is just not accessible. So that's an interesting fun fact, if you want. Yeah, good luck. Good luck playing the game when you can only, like, see down to the upgrade button, and when the lowest item in the list that you can actually access with the mouse is bug spray. That can be a challenge mode or something. If you want to, go right ahead. There's also the matter, and I thought about doing this and then decided not to do it in the last video, and now I kind of want to do it again. I mentioned resolution scaler. There's also frames per second, the game's actual frame rate that it's running at. That's another one of the Raspberry Pi settings that I changed. If I were to go into Raspberry Pi macros, we can see that the default resolution scale that we're using on the Pi is half of what we're using on Windows, and the default frame rate on the Pi is half of what we're using on Windows. I've been recording this video for an hour, 15 minutes. It's probably going to end up being over an hour long, so to that I say, let's do it. Alright, I'd rather do this now. I'd rather collapse all the settings into, the settings implementation, I should say, because I did the menu in the last one. I'd rather collapse this all into one video than to, like, drag it out longer than necessary. Okay, pause menu settings. I'm going to add... Okay, I'm gonna add two more things that are similar to the FPS, the screen size setting, and those are going to be resolution scale and the game's frame rate, and those are all going to work similarly. They're going to be on these like carousel menu things. If I were to just copy and paste these twice, we would simply have three game resolution buttons, which isn't really useful for anything to us. But we will be filling those in. And I should probably set this back to 1600 by 900, like this. And then we'll actually get to see what we're doing. All right, so... settings. This is, again, we have three resolution buttons. They're all going to do the same thing because they all have the same code running behind them. See, it's slightly off-center towards the bottom, Let me just like move this up a little bit, nudge this up. Everything can move up a notch over here. Like that. And that's more or less centered, right? Yeah, that's centered enough at least. Can I select more than one object in the room editor? I didn't think I could, but I feel like I should be able to. Oh, I can control click to select multiple things, like this. Yeah, more or less. All right, this one is going to be FPS label, and this get text is going to be creation code. Self.text is going to be just like FPS plus the string value of game get speed underscore FPS. Okay, and the next one is going to be the resolution scale, and that's going to be a little bit more. All right, I'll work on the FPS first because that will be easier to set to work on. I'm going to, again, like resolution, I'm going to predefine a couple different frame rates, and it's going to be like probably 30, 60, and what are all the cool kids using now? Like 120, 144? I don't know. 120 makes sense, but I know 144 hertz monitors exist, so who even knows at this point? 30, 60, 120. And just because it doesn't cost anything to me, 144. And this is going to be, instead of screen size, frame rates, frame dates, frame rates, frame rate index. Again, the default is going to be 1 because the default is going to be 30 FPS. If you really want to make it higher, you can. If you want to go into the configuration file and set your own frame rate to whatever, go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you. And this is going to be implemented very similarly to the resolution. It might actually be a little bit easier. Creation code, on click, frame rate index, frame rates. I may want to give this a slightly better name. This array a slightly better name, like potential frame rates or something like that. And we don't need all this nonsense with the struct because we're only dealing with a single value here. Game set speed. Game speed underscore FPS. Apply screen size. We don't need to do that because all we need to do to set the frames per second is basically this. The update is going to be... The frame rate isn't locked to the frequency of your monitor when you go into full screen, right? I don't think so. So I can get rid of this as well. Okay. So that is the down button, and this is going to be the up button. Again, I keep opening the variables window for some reason, and I don't know why. What is it when you go up? It's a min of the value +1 instead of -1, and the array that we're getting the length of is going to be, instead of game.screen sizes, it's going to be game.frame rates. Like that. Okay. And my monitor is only 60 hertz, so I don't think going above 60 is really going to do anything for me, but dropping it down to 30 should at least affect the frame rate meter in the corner of the screen. Whether or not I can personally tell the difference remains to be seen. If I go into pause, settings, FPS, let's go to 30, and this is crashing because of illegal array use. And that's fun. Okay, I was trying to subtract from the array, which doesn't make any sense. Did I do the same thing in here? Frame rate index, yes. Okay, I did the same thing in there. Settings, set the frame rate to 0, apparently. You're allowed to do that? That doesn't make any sense. What is the value that I have accidentally invoked upon myself? All right, first, is this showing the right... Not that one. Is this showing the right value? Game get speed, game speed FPS. That should be a number. I'm not seeing an error message like, I tried to set the game speed to 0 or something like that. Oh, you know what? These are in the wrong order. Okay, so it should be... Alright, not sure how I got that wrong. Game set speed, the value, so that's going to be 30, and the type is going to be FPS in the wrong order. Okay. I do not know how I got that wrong. Game set speed, game dot frame rates, game dot frame rate index, game speed FPS. Okay. The number of different ways that I can mess up my code is quite vast. You may notice. So let me try that again. Set the frame rate down to 30. That is indeed what the label says. And we're seeing that when the game is running, the thing says 30, and I definitely feel like I'm seeing more jitter than I'm used to seeing when a game is running at 30 frames per second. So maybe I really am getting used to 60 versus 30 frames per second, because as I said a few videos ago, for the longest time, it just went completely over my head. But maybe after a decade of 60 hertz screens, it's finally starting to sink in. All right. Anyway, that works. If I were to go farther up the ladder, if I were to go to 144, we are still trying to do 144 frames per second. Although again, my monitor is only 60 hertz, so to be honest, it could be for all I know, and I just wouldn't notice the difference. If I increase the speed, we're going to be the photos are going to be crawling along twice as fast. But that has not anything to do with the actual frame rate, the number of frames per second that we're rendering and putting on the screen. All right, I can. I can implement myself an FPS setting, and I should probably save that to the file next. Where are we going to do that? I don't think I can use FPS as a variable name because I think that's a reserved word. Much like the state of the game being in full screen mode or not, that is handled by GameMaker and not something that I have to keep track of myself. And when you load this back out, I'm going to separate this into sections. When you load this back out, this is going to be frame rate index and frames per second. Actually, game set speed, frames per second. That's not saved to a variable. Game set speed. That. Game speed FPS. And we can attempt to validate the frame rate index. With the default being, what's the default? 1? I think it's 160 FPS. And constrain it so that we can't set it to something outside the bounds of the array. Minimum 0, maximum array length. And now if I wanted to, I could set it to like 50 or something, and we would have the game running at 50 FPS or 12 FPS or whatever you want. This should not be something with an XY though, because this is a scalar value and not a vector value. All right, that is that task down. If I were to actually change anything now and save the setting, we should be seeing in a minute this file updating. So let me settings FPS. We can set that down to 60. Yes, we will reload it, and we do now have a new value for frames per second. And if I were to, let's make this something ridiculous like 15. So we're going to pretend we're playing this on the Raspberry Pi. We can set the FPS down to 15. We should be seeing the game running at that speed. Okay. Definitely starting to look like a slideshow here. 12 to 15 FPS is where things start to look like a slideshow. And we see FPS is 15 over here. If I were to bump it up to 60, the frame rate index is still where it was. So the frame rate index was still 0. You increase that to 2, we're going to jump to 60 FPS. Everything's fine. I can't commit to that change. Save the FPS settings. Okay. This is a situation where that squash feature might come in useful, because now that I've done both of those, like, is it worth squashing these together? Can I do that? I'm learning what the squash command does exactly now. Is that going to do what I think it does? It looks like it did. Okay, cool. Learning things about Git on video for reasons unrelated. Did I undo something? Why did this get deleted? Hello? Did GameMaker just have a weird moment when I did that? That was parent UI, right? It's still there. Parent UI create event. Why does Git think I deleted that? Pretty sure I did not. If I delete the change in Git, is it gonna change anything? It doesn't look like it. Okay, whatever. Someone was having a weird moment. Anyway, next, the Raspberry Pi macros. Okay, so the application service default width and height. This is going to be... Where is this defined? Or where is this used, rather, is the better question. This is going to be, I think, like, set way back at the beginning, yeah. So when you start the game, the target FPS is set based on the macro, based on the platform that you're running this on, so 30 on the Pi, 60 on everything else. The application service default width and height. This is also set when the game starts, and after that you can kind of change it to whatever you want. I am going to, instead of doing this now, I'm going to move this to the graphical settings. Goodbye, all of you database things. I'm going to move this down to the graphical settings, and I'm going to maybe move it down here to the bottom. Set the resolution scaler to... Instead of calling it the default width and height, I'm going to make it scale. There's only going to be one value, and it's going to be like 1 or 0.5. And it doesn't really make sense to have a resolution scale, at least that I'm aware, that isn't the same on both axes. So we can set that to the resolution scaler. And we can surface resize this to whatever that needs to be by default. I think now that I have finished off the stuff with anchoring things on the UI to wherever they belong, I don't need to display set GUI maximize anymore. I don't know if that was even doing anything to begin with, to be honest. But I'll find out. After I finish with this, I will remove that line and see if everything breaks horrendously. Let's see. Similar to having a set of frame rates, I'm going to have resolution scales, resolution scale index. I'm going to call it scalar. Just one, so that all of these words are like the same length and it's satisfying, and two, because that's what it seems like everybody else in the world of computer graphics calls it, and using a different word would be weird. Anyway, the options can be one. I'm gonna go with, like, is it customary to make it to go in small increments, like 0.75, 0.66, 0.5, 0.4, 0.33, and so on? I do not know. I've never actually looked that closely at what the settings are in games that I've played that allow this. I actually don't know the answer to that. Anyway, these are the options. We are going to... I guess it would make sense also to have a macro representing the default scale index. so that these aren't like misaligned or anything like that. Actually, you know what? I can simplify this further. The default scale index. Okay, 1, the default needs to be 0. And the reduced one, 0.5, is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. The reduced one is going to be 3. And instead of making those macros, I can simply make resolution scaler defaults to whatever that is. All right, keep it simple, stupid. No need to have a million variables flying around if you can just derive the rest of them from a single. There's a couple things I'll need to do here. First, I will deal with the UI. I will make the UI respond. Screen size index, resolution, scalar index is going to be set like this. Apply screen size and save settings. I will leave those there for a bit. This is going to be independent of full screen settings, so I can get rid of the disabling and full screen thing. Same over here. I can replace this resolution scalar index, resolution scalar index, and resolution scalar options. Options? I did call it that, right? All right, I did. Oh, it's a E. Should be A. Scalar is with an A. And that is going to let's see. That is going to set the value, and game.apply screen size is where the magic is actually going to happen. And the text. Let me just name that, and let me creation code. Text can be this. All right, that's just going to be a label telling you what it represents and a number. And the UI should respond when I click on the button now. Nothing is actually going to happen to the screen because that's the only part of the code which I haven't implemented yet. If I go to settings, scale is not showing a value. Why is that? Oh. Why is that? Default should be 0, so resolution scalar index will be 0. Resolution scalar options index 0 should be 1. Okay, you know what? I think I did forget something. That is just game.resolution scalar is going to equal I need to actually set that value in both the plus and the minus. That should not be preventing this text label from drawing a 1. Again, of all the issues that could happen here, this is not one I expected. And plus and minus. Okay, well, the plus button is making it go down, which is not really what's supposed to be happening. It's getting reset to 1 somewhere. It's toggling between 0 and 1. Okay, I think that's a different issue. Regarding the fact that I was using the wrong value there, and kind of that could have caused some pretty chaotic behavior. Actually, come to think of it. All right, now you can see in the printout at below the game window, you can see that it's behaving appropriately, but it's still not drawing. That annoys me. Why is that? All right, first let us just like arrange these values in the opposite order. So this can be 0.25, 0.33, 0.4, 0.5, 0.66, 0.75. I can't help but feel like some of these values are like redundant. Like 0.4, I don't know if that's something that people are really gonna ever actually use, but I'll leave it. And the default index can be 0, 1, 2, 3, still for the Raspberry Pi, 4, 5, 6 for desktop. Oh, wait, there's a plus here. So GameMaker's interpreting this as 2 statements. Wow, that's dumb. Okay, so GameMaker saw that there was no plus operator there, and it was just doing this. This is how it was reading it, and string of game.resolution scalar was just getting returned into the void, and nothing was happening to it. Okay. This is one of the reasons why the fact that GML does not demand semicolons kind of annoys me, because you can occasionally run into issues like that. In programming languages that demand semicolons, this would have caused problems. But in GML is perfectly happy to just do this and let you carry on with your day, and let you wondering why these values aren't being concatenated together. All right. Anyway, the scale is going to be 1. I can reduce that. I may, just so that every number has the same number of decimal places. String format is a function that we can use. The total integer places can be 1. Don't care. Decimal places can be 2. This will cause the value 1 to be formatted as like 1.00, which is more or less what we're looking for. Settings, scale is 1. Can decrease that. Okay. Resolution, scalar. Is this? Oh yeah, I deleted that. Did I? Is that another GameMaker being weird thing? What's instance 22BBCAC6C? 2. Oh, that's because I renamed it to something else. Okay, never mind. Resolution, scalar, settings. Next, we will actually make this do something when it's supposed to. All I need to do to make that take effect is in the apply screen size function, because I'm calling that from the buttons whenever anything is clicked on. I am calling the apply screen size method there. All I have to really do is, instead of setting the application surface size directly to the current screen size.xy, we can set that to the current screen size.xy times the resolution scalar. And when the application surface is drawn in the regular game object, oh, it's backbone. When the application surface is drawn, which I guess is just going to be in the GUI method, we are automatically stretching it to the size of the window, so we don't have to worry about any weird things happening there. And this should allow us to have a little bit of a performance setting by way of shrinking the canvas size, basically. So you can see, as I do this, things are getting more pixelated. This is 1/4 size. This is nigh unplayable. It's not unplayable. I shouldn't say that, but it's very, very much, you notice the pixels. I guess if you wanted to deliberately have like a retro aesthetic for like an arcade machine or something, that's a valid use for this. The user interface is the same resolution as it always was, because this is not being drawn on the application surface. One solution, one alternative to using the GUI layer, if you really wanted to, is to not use the GUI layer and to instead just set like an ortho projection at the end of the draw event in 3D, in the regular draw event, and just draw the UI there. But if you were to do that, a resolution scalar of any sort would cause the UI to become very pixelated as well, and also to move around, because then we're dealing with like absolute coordinates and not screen coordinates, and it would be a huge mess. Anyway, that works. I am happy with that. That was much easier to get going than the actual settings menu was, which is hilarious because it's usually the other way around. Next, we are going to be saving this to the file, and it's going to look a lot like the other settings. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to do that, and I'm just going to cut that out so that you all don't have to watch me do that, because I think you get the point by now. This video is going on for a very long time. Editing this is going to suck. Okay, here we go. I went and did that. I've also moved the apply screen size call to outside of the try catch statement, just as a sort of a catch-all, so that the resolution of everything is appropriately set whenever. I'm also going to surface resize. That doesn't need to be there anymore, because we're already doing that when we call apply screen size over there. And I've done the settings, I've done a save and load, I've done some tests, and it works the way it's supposed to. We have the resolution scalar here in the settings JSON, complete with some floating point weirdness, because you can't perfectly represent 0.4 in base 2, as it turns out. If I were to I've allowed the minimum size, the minimum scale to be 0.05, which is 1/20th. And I chose that number pretty much out of thin air. I want to see what that looks like. So let me just run the game with the with 1/20th as many pixels on each axis. So with 1/400th as many pixels as you would normally have, and that looks about right. We've got a we're playing with like mosaic tiles or something like that. This is about like how good my eyesight is in real life without glasses. That's the best joke I could come up with. Anyway, that works. If we were to go into settings and change that back to something sane, please and thank you, we can. Things are back to normal. Notepad++ would like to inform me that the settings file has changed because I did that when I clicked around in the menu. That's it. That is all that I want to do in this video, finally, because this recording has been going on for an hour, 51 minutes. I'd like to cut that down a little bit. But we've implemented the settings. All right, this is I'm happy with this. Couple of this probably could have been done in the last video. I probably could have just laid out at least space for the FPS and the scalar values back then, but I don't know why I thought about it. I decided not to. I don't know why I decided not to. It's here now, and that's good enough. So I'm gonna stop now. I hope you all found this very interesting. If you've been looking around for ways to implement these settings in your own games, I hope this has given you some ideas. By the way, one, I need to make a commit. Save and load the resolution scalar values. I also did say that I was going to just like get rid of this because I'm pretty sure I don't need that anymore. That display set GUI maximize function call in order for the user interface to work. And indeed, we seem to be clicking and mousing over the correct things. If I were to make the screen bigger, I am still mousing over the correct things. And everything. If I were to reduce the... Ooh, okay, so that is not what I want to happen. Do I still need that then? When I play with the scale? I was under the impression that the GUI size wouldn't change unless you asked it to, but it's possible that that is not the case. All right, let's try that again. The resolution scale is 0.5, and that the UI is remaining in where it should be. Okay, so I do need that. I'll just leave a comment, just warning my future self, because I know I'm gonna try to delete it again if I don't warn myself, because I'm not gonna remember. I don't like playing with the GUI scale functions because there's some of them. I think they should do things that are other than what they actually do, and it confuses me because I don't use them right. Alright, that aside, I'm going to end this off. I hope you found that interesting. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games about dragons and whatever. The next videos in this tower defense series are not going to be nearly as long. I wanted this to be one and done. There was a time when I probably would have tried to split this up into multiple, but I want to be done with this now. Next time, I'm probably going to be doing more menu stuff. This time I'm thinking I've written down that I want to do like a main menu and a level select, and add the ability to go between levels and correctly like create, destroy level data, and that sort of thing. Otherwise, I try to post about 2 or 3 game dev videos a week, one of these and one tutorial. So if you're interested in any of this, feel free to subscribe and stick around. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute towards these videos being made, there will be links to that in all the usual places. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed that, all hour and a half, whatever of it, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Kiara Elizabeth, Connor, David Key, Edward Holt, Emily Koyo, Halo Factory, Posho, Syndra Larson, Tusk, and Zenith for supporting these videos. If you want to see your name in the credits or to hear yourself shouted out at the end here, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.